The 2007 NFL Draft is one of the best draft crops ever. The top 10 picks had a wide variety of rich talent, and some just flat-out swings and misses. A few of the names in the top 10 will go down in canon and are known as some of the best to ever play the game. Others you may have not ever even heard of. But without further ado, let's hop right into it. With the first pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders selected Jamarcus Russell. Russell was arguably the most physically talented QB prospect since John Elway, and he stood at 6'6", 260 pounds with an arm comparing to Brett Favre's, while also being a good runner and having remarkably quick feet for such a large guy. However, hidden behind his talent were a couple of major red flags. For starters, he barely held on to the starting job in college as he barely beat out Matt Flynn and Ryan Perlux. And 6 months prior to draft day, very few experts had him pegged as a first rounder. He also was seen as an atrocious decision maker, and he ran a fairly simple offense at LSU. Even though these concerns were brought up, Raiders owner Al Davis fell in love with the idea of Russell and made him the first overall pick. Coming into his rookie year, he didn't see the field until early December as he held out due to a contract agreement. Russell did flash some talent in his first start in the final game of the season, but he was intercepted twice and also fumbled once. In year 2, he was named the opening day starter for Oakland, and after starting 15 games, he was underwhelming to say the least. He did have moments of hope, but overall he finished with 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a whopping 12 fumbles. Once again in year 3, he was named the opening day starter. Following a disastrous 7-game stretch in which Russell threw for 1 touchdown and 7 interceptions, he was benched. Russell at this point was moved to the 3rd-string quarterback on the depth chart. After multiple injuries to Bruce Gradkowski and Charlie Fry, Russell was forced back into action and looked flat-out terrible. He finished the 2009 season with the lowest QBR, lowest completion percentage, fewest passing TDs, and fewest passing yards among all qualifying quarterbacks in the NFL. During the 2010 offseason, NBC Sports described Russell as annually and incredibly overweight and arrived at minicamp weighing in at a whopping 290 pounds. Later in the offseason, the Raiders traded for Jason Campbell, which ultimately led to the Raiders releasing Jamarcus Russell. A few years later, Russell attempted to make a comeback and was actually documented by Bleacher Report in a series titled Jamarcus Russell's Road Back to the NFL. The Bears and Ravens showed some interest, but ultimately, no team decided to sign him. Russell is looked at by many as arguably the biggest draft bust in NFL history. With the second pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions selected Calvin Johnson. Johnson was seen as arguably the most talented receiver taken in the past decade and the best player in the draft. With blazing speed, impressive body control, and a huge frame, many scouts saw the potential for Johnson to be a great NFL wide receiver. Most know the story of Calvin Johnson, and his career was nothing short of spectacular. He started off his career having a pretty good rookie season with Detroit, recording 756 yards and 5 total touchdowns. But after his rookie season, he never looked back, and for the remainder of his career was the most feared wide receiver in the NFL. He is a 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, named to the 2010s All-Decade team, has the most receiving yards in a single season, the most consecutive 100-yard receiving games with 8, and his 5,137 yards from 2011 to 2013 are the most by any player over a 3-year stretch in NFL history. Megatron in his prime is looked at as arguably the most dominant wide receiver the NFL has ever seen. But unfortunately, his career was cut shorter than most anticipated after he retired in 2016 due to a back injury that he suffered as a rookie, and he stated that it lingered throughout his entire career. And most recently, in 2021, Calvin Johnson was elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. With the 3rd pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns selected Joe Thomas. Thomas was looked at as a surefire elite prospect at the tackle position. He was noted as the most likely Pro Bowler as a rookie, even ahead of Calvin Johnson. He was an NFL-ready tackle who didn't seem to have any true weaknesses, and one scout gave Thomas the highest draft grade of any prospect that he had ever scouted. Thomas was immediately looked at as a top tackle during his rookie year in the NFL and was named to a Pro Bowl his rookie year and finished 2nd in the Rookie of the Year voting. Like Megatron, he never looked back and was quickly looked at one of the best tackles in the league. Joe Thomas is a 10-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first-team All-Pro on the NFL's 2010s Decade Team, and holds the record for the most consecutive snaps played at 10,363. After a triceps injury in 2017, the Iron Man finally missed his first NFL snaps and was placed on IR. In 2018, Thomas announced his retirement from the NFL. Joe Thomas is the only offensive lineman in NFL history to be voted to 10 consecutive Pro Bowls. He was also voted on NFL.com as the 7th greatest offensive tackle of all time, as well as the 3rd greatest Cleveland Brown of all time. With the 4th pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected Gaines Adams. The 2006 ACC Defensive Player of the Year, Adams was seen as an outstanding athlete with the burst and natural instincts to become an elite pass rusher in the NFL. The biggest concern surrounding him was his ability to anchor against the run. But regardless, the Bucs needed pass rushers, and most viewed him as the best in the class at getting after the quarterback. Adams had a decent first 2 seasons for the Bucs. He played in all 32 games and had 12.5 sacks, 110 tackles, and 2 picks during the 2-season frame. These numbers were only decent though. Adams was a top 5 pick, so many expected much more. Bucs head coach Raheem Morris challenged him to rack up double-digit sacks. Otherwise, most would consider Adams a bust. Adams did not exceed those expectations in year 3 with Tampa, as he had just 1 sack in the first 5 games of the 2010 season, resulting in the Bucs shipping him off to Chicago for a 2nd-round pick and putting up minimal stats for the Bears. Sadly, following the 2010 season, Adams passed away at 26 years old due to a surprising heart attack. With the 5th pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals selected Levi Brown. The giant offensive tackle out of Penn State, Brown was seen at games of starting. Although Brown was very successful in college, he was quite awful his rookie season. He allowed 8 sacks while only starting 11 games. Coming into year 2, head coach Ken Whisenhunt was clear that Brown would be the starting right tackle. Unfortunately, Brown did not fare any better in year 2, allowing 11 sacks and 16 starts. The next 2 seasons for Brown, he allowed a combined 19 sacks, resulting in the Cardinals releasing Brown in March of 2012, only to re-sign him 3 days later, and then he tore his tricep, putting him on IR for the 2012 season. Coming into 2013, Brown had one more shot to prove he belonged in the NFL, but things did not go to plan. In the season opener against the St. Louis Rams, Brown allowed 3 sacks playing against Robert Quinn. Shortly after, the Cardinals shipped him to the Steelers for a 5th-round pick, and after limited playing time with Pittsburgh, he was cut and then retired from the NFL following the 2013 season. With the 6th pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins selected Laron Landry. Seen as the consensus best safety and one of the top overall players in the draft, Washington ignored their terrible run D to select the safety out of LSU. Landry was big, fast, excelled in the run D, and built an extremely impressive resume at LSU, being a national championship and a consensus All-American. He immediately started alongside Pro Bowler Sean Taylor, and the two got the nickname of Area 51. His first few seasons, he was seen as an average to above average player, as he lacked coverage skills but could do one thing extremely well, and that was hurting opposing teams. Coming into the 2010 season, he moved from free safety, which was not the position he excelled in, and moved to a roving linebacker role. It's safe to say the move worked out. On opening night, he recorded 17 tackles against the Dallas Cowboys. Played great in his new role, but unfortunately injured his Achilles tendon and was placed on IR. Head coach Mike Shanahan stated that Landry would have been the Defensive Player of the Year if not for his injury. After playing in limited time in the 2011 season, Washington chose to not re-sign him, and he went on to sign with the Jets. Landry had his best pro season in New York, recording 100 tackles and being named to his first Pro Bowl, not being an alternate. After hitting the open market again, he then signed a 3-year deal with the Colts, but did not live up to his contract, as his play declined and he was suspended multiple times for testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs. After being released by the Colts, he was suspended the 3rd time for performance-enhancing drugs, which resulted in an indefinite ban from the NFL. With the 7th pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings selected Adrian Peterson. AP was seen as a freak athlete with the size, speed, and explosiveness to be a great NFL running back. Although some scouts were concerned with his running style and if it would work in the NFL, he was compared to Eric Dickerson, although some stated that Dickerson was twice his size and AP did have injury concerns. Anyone that knows anything about football knows that AP put those scouts' concerns to sleep quickly. AP was quickly viewed as one of the best running backs in the league upon his arrival and was named Offensive Rookie of the Year after rushing for 1,341 yards during his rookie year. The next few seasons, AP was one of the most feared running backs in the league and put up video game-like numbers with highlights for days. Late in the 2011 season, he tore his ACL and MCL. Many critics wondered if he could ever recover back to full strength. I think it's safe to say he did. In 2012, following his gruesome injury, he led the NFL in rushing yards, with 2,097 being the second most ever for a running back behind his former comp, Eric Dickerson. He also became the last running back to win the MVP award. Following few seasons, AP was dominant, but eventually injuries crept in on him. Following his stint with the Vikings, he went on to play for the Saints, Cardinals, Redskins, Lions, Titans, and Seahawks. AP will be in Canton one day and is seen as one of the best running backs to ever play in the NFL, with highlight reels and numbers to back that up. With the 8th pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons selected Jamaal Anderson. Anderson led the SEC in sacks his final year at Arkansas, and the wide receiver turned DN was seen as a quick-twitch pass rusher that could consistently get pressure on the opposing team's quarterback. Anderson started for Atlanta his rookie year, but was extremely quiet and didn't even record a sack till year 2. He moved to defensive tackle after a few games in 2009, but due to injuries and a lack of overall play, he was released by Atlanta before the 2011 season. Coming into the 2011 season, he was signed by the Colts, recording 3 sacks on the year. Shortly after Indy, he had short stints with Cincinnati and Chicago. That pretty much is the sum of his career, and he finished with 7.5 career sacks and is regarded as a major miss by Atlanta. Patrick Willis, Marshawn Lynch, and Darrelle Revis list just a few of the all-time greats that Atlanta passed on to select Anderson. With the 9th pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins selected Ted Ginn Jr. Speed was the name of the game for Ginn. He was an undersized receiver that didn't have great hands, but Miami was banking on his world-class speed and hoping the rest would translate. Most thought Miami would select quarterback Brady Quinn, and even Ginn was surprised by the pick after getting booed by fans during the draft. Unfortunately, for Miami, the rest of Ginn's game did not translate, and he was best seen as a returner in his career. Although his career was not terrible, he played for 13 seasons, but for a top 10 pick, it's fair to say he did not live up to his draft expectations. His career highlight came in 2015 as he recorded 10 touchdowns for the Panthers. And most recently, he announced his retirement from football in 2021. With the 10th overall pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans selected Amobi Okoye. Okoye was the youngest player to ever be drafted in the first round at only 19 years old. His career actually started off great as he was named the Defensive Rookie of the Month for September in 2007 after leading the AFC with 4 sacks. But things started to fall apart for Okoye pretty quickly, and he only managed to get 1.5 more sacks for the rest of his rookie year. The next 3 seasons, he was never able to find that magic and recorded 5.5 sacks and then was released by Houston. His last playing time in the NFL came with the Bears as he signed with them in 2011 and recorded 5 sacks in 25 games played. In 2013, he was signed by the Cowboys but had been diagnosed with an anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis, resulting in him suffering reoccurring seizures. And in 2016, he signed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the CFL, and that being the last football-related news for Okoye. The top 10 picks of the 2007 NFL Draft is a very interesting crop, having the biggest draft bust of all time, Hall of Fame talent, and guys that fans have probably never even heard of. Overall, this is one of the best drafts of all time, and with 3 surefire Hall of Famers, we still have to consider this a great top 10 class despite some of the major misses.